Boston University professor and presidential historian Tom Whalen. Tom, first of all, it's great to see you as always. This is, if memory serves, since the Reagan episode, this is the first time a president or a former president has been an attempt at assassination.
Right. There was an attempt on George W. Bush's life in Georgia, the country. A grenade was thrown at him. The pin was out, but it didn't explode.
This is, we tend to call this, we want to frame it in history, right? So this is clearly a historic moment. What does history tell us about what happens after something like this?
Well, it says that, it reflects the times in which the assassination attempt or assassinations happens. During the Civil War, at the end of it, Abraham Lincoln gets killed. At the turn of the 20th century, there was all sorts of divisions in our country, radicals, progressives, so forth, and President McKinley lost his life. Same thing in 1912, another divisive political year. Teddy Roosevelt, former president, in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the site of this week's Republican.
Was shot at.
Shot, and the bullet went right into his chest. The only thing that saved him was that the bullet had to go through his speech, which he had in his suit jacket and a glass case. Otherwise, it would have hit his heart.
Can the political temperature be turned down?
I would hope so, but, judging by what we've seen the last few months, I don't know. I think it's good that President Biden, President Trump have agreed to kind of lower the temperature, at least in the immediate aftermath. But you can't guarantee it. And, a lot of people have talked about how this is like 1968, when Martin Luther King Jr. died, and Robert F. Kennedy. And this is another example that maybe we're having 1968 redux.
Is there, obviously in the wake of President Kennedy's assassination, there was the commission. Could this reach that level? Could there be an extensive commission to exactly analyze this, determine whether indeed it was a lone wolf or if it was a conspiracy? Or could it reach that level?
It depends on what Congress wants and what President Biden wants. After the Reagan assassination, there was no big, Warren Commission-style report. And I think, the FBI is going to probably take the onus here to figure out, or in the Secret Service, what exactly went wrong here. And that's the other thing throughout these assassinations, throughout American history. An assassin always finds a way.
Right.
And Theodore Roosevelt once said that, a well-dressed man who is willing to give up his life can kill a president.
That's haunting.
It is. In fact, the morning John F. Kennedy was killed, he told his wife, he said that, if someone wants to take a shot at me from a window, there's nothing I can do about it.
From a window, there's nothing I can do about it.
And
the old saying, and Tom and I were talking about this earlier, locks only keep honest people out. If there's a bad person out there that wants to do a bad thing, it's almost unavoidable.
And luck plays a role here, whether you live or you die. I think President Trump yesterday was very lucky.
Well, and we were also talking about that. Maybe that much, maybe this much, whatever. The president turns one way or the other. And the narrative this morning is far different from what we are talking about right now, isn't it?
Right. And, sometimes I was thinking back to the early 70s, Arthur Bremer, he crippled George Wallace. He tried to kill him. His original target was Richard Nixon.
Right.
But he didn't get the opportunity, so he said, okay, well, I'll shoot at Wallace.
So the next event is the Republican National Convention, which begins tomorrow in Milwaukee. How does this fit into the convention?
Well, it's never happened before a convention, as far as I know. So I think a lot of speeches right now are probably being rewritten by the Republican speakers because it's usually a very kind of vocal, partisan affair with a lot of invective thrown against the other side.
Right.
I don't think it'll look good for the television audience to see all these accusations flying in the event of this horrific event.